Welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Monday morning. Thank you for joining me. If you're new to the channel, please do hit the like and subscribe button and the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. Right, I'm recording this on a Sunday evening, and the one thing that we can be fairly certain of is that West Ham United are unlikely to be pursuing any interest or any further interest in João Palhinha in this summer's transfer window. I'm sure you've already heard that Paulina suffered an injury to his shoulder on Sunday evening whilst on duty with Fulham in a friendly game. Now, I don't know how serious this injury is, but he looked to me in some pain when coming off the pitch, and it looks as if we will now have to turn our attention to alternative transfer targets to replace Declan Rice. Now, I don't wish any player any harm, but in a way, it could be a blessing in disguise for us because we've already made a second bid for the player on Friday night, or Friday during the daytime, sorry, to the value of £50 million. And that was turned down by Fulham. Now, to be quite honest with you, 50 million for Paulina would be too much to pay anyway. So now we have no choice but to target other players in this transfer window. And of course, I think the prime target is now likely to be Southampton's James Ward-Prowse. Look, we know Ward-Prowse is not a defensive midfielder. Hence, other targets have got to start coming into the fray. And Moyes has got to start expanding his mind a little bit and thinking about players outside of the Premier League. There are so many decent players out there, especially in the leagues around Europe. And of course, we would all like to think that perhaps the prime targets should now be the likes of Edson Alvarez of Ajax or even Youssouf Fofana of Monaco. But in reality, we are more likely to see Moyes dig his heels in and look for Premier League experienced players. So the likes of Scott McTominay of Man United and maybe even Philip Billing of Bournemouth might be seriously considered. Now, I said in a recent show that when it comes to McTominay, I've got no issues with him. I think he's a perfectly decent footballer and can do a really good job for West Ham. And at a value of what, £25 million? He wouldn't be the worst signing we've ever made. He's still got 2 years left on plus a year option on his contract. And at 26 years of age, could still offer us some of the best years of his career. When it comes to Billing, look, okay, he's more of an all-rounded midfielder who can indeed play defensive midfield, but he's a bit more of a box-to-box midfielder. At 27, and with a year remaining on his contract at Bournemouth, he could come at a cost of something like 20 million and might also prove to be worth a shot. But it's fairly certain that what Moyes will do is turn his attention to Ward-Prowse as the main target. And yes, his experience will count for a lot, but for around £40 million and a player that's turning 29 in a few months' time, one has to ask whether he really is the right fit for West Ham United's future. For the now, absolutely. But even if we buy a player like Ward-Prowse or Billing, we still need a defensive midfielder. But all that aside for a moment, because there's another thing that we've got to worry about, and the major issue being is David Moyes' procrastination in the transfer market. We have seen the same pattern occur in every transfer window for the past few years, where Moyes becomes almost frozen when it comes to trying to decide which player he should be going for. We had this back in the summer of 2021, when Moyes couldn't decide whether to sign Kurt Zouma or Fiorentina's Nikola Milenkovic. Back then, we heard that Milenkovic was close to signing, only for Moyes to change his mind and go for Zouma. Then when the Zouma deal looked shaky, Moyes changed his mind again and was back in for Milenkovic, only for the Zouma deal to be back on again. And it was a merry-go-round for much of that summer transfer window until Zouma signed. Then, of course, we've got the infamous January 2021 the infamous January transfer window of 2022, when Moyes seemed so undecided that we didn't sign a single player in that window, despite suffering some major injuries to our defenders, and we ended up limping our way through the rest of that season in the Premier League. and came up just a bit short in beating Eintracht Frankfurt in the semi-finals of the Europa League. All we needed then was an injection of at least one player in that window. Nothing too extreme. One player either in defence, midfield, or even in attack, just to give us that lift, that impetus in seeing the season out strongly. Can you imagine what our fate would have been had we strengthened in January 2022 and gone on to win the Europa League that season? It would have resulted in West Ham United playing in the Champions League instead of playing in the Europa Conference League. Look, okay, granted, it is highly unlikely that we would have gotten far in the Champions League. Let's not delude ourselves. But it is possible that had we dropped down from the Champions League to the Europa League, we may have stood a good chance of winning that particular trophy last season. Look, but on the flip side, had we not played in the Europa Conference, we wouldn't have won it. We wouldn't have made it into Europe for a third straight season in a row. So in all honesty, there are swings and roundabouts. And I guess, but here we are with another transfer window open and another season of European football looming. And it seems that we're no closer to strengthening the squad now than we were at the beginning of the transfer window just over 5 weeks ago. Now, as I said on my show on Friday, there is still just under 6 weeks now to go in the transfer window. And I've got absolutely no doubt that we will get players in. And I also said that I cannot see us getting more than 2 or 3 players this summer, unless any more players leave the club, with the likelihood of maybe Creswell and Antonio being the main players who may leave this summer. Now, I want to qualify something because people think I've said that all we need is 2 or 3 players. Look, if I was in charge, I would undoubtedly look at strengthening in a number of positions. But this really does look like a one-out, one-in player approach this summer. Hence why, at the moment, I don't think we will see more than 2 or 3 players being bought in. If I had my way, I'd target about 5 positions. I'd want to strengthen our left-back position. I'd want another central defender. I certainly want a defensive midfielder, an additional option out wide, and maybe a striker as well. So when I say I don't see us getting in any more than 2 or 3 players, that's not because I think that's all we need, but that's because we really will manage a one-out, one-in approach. I also want to qualify something else. Again, maybe a misunderstanding. If we only get 2 or 3 players, I think we still have enough quality in the current squad to see us through a half-decent season. Will we finish in the top 6 with the squad that we have, plus another 2 or 3 players on top? Possibly not. But I also don't think that we will be bad enough to be fighting another relegation battle. Now, I know what you're going to say. How silly of you. We are weaker without Rice, so it's inevitable that we will have an even worse season. Well, here's why I don't think that will be the case. Let's address the elephant in the room for a moment and how Declan Rice actually disrupted our midfield for the past couple of seasons by wanting to be that all-action, box-to-box midfielder that he craved rather than doing the job that he was best at, and that was to be a defensive midfielder. It's interesting how when Declan Rice plays for England, Gareth Southgate knows exactly what he wants from him, and that is to shield the defence. That's it. He doesn't want him to do any other job but to be a central defensive midfielder. And I think, to be quite honest with you, that David Moyes, I think one of his biggest errors was to pander to Declan Rice and allow him to play a different way for West Ham. I guess Moyes must have thought that by giving Rice the desire, the freedom to play a more advanced midfield role, then it might have made him stay at the club a lot longer. Well, it didn't. And to be quite honest with you, it might be another blessing in disguise now that Rice is gone, because once we get ourselves a proper defensive midfielder, then perhaps our solidity in midfield might return. So given that we only need 2 or 3 players at this moment in time, why is it taking so very long? Well, again, we have to look back to this time last summer when we ended up doing our business so very late. Moyes was stuck on certain players where he chased them relentlessly for most of that last summer transfer window without success. Let's not forget that he kept chasing Calvin Phillips of Man City, who made it clear that he didn't want to leave the club. He was also after Lingard, of course, for most of the summer transfer window. Philip Kostic, who was then at Frankfurt and ended up signing for Juventus, and also Amadou Onana, who was close to signing for West Ham, but ended up opting to sign for Everton instead. So has Moyes learned any lessons from that last summer's transfer window? Well, it seems not, because now all we keep hearing is his desire to bring in Premier League experienced players such as Harry Maguire, João Palhinha, and James Ward-Prowse. Now, I think Moyes will indeed get his way with Ward-Prowse. I think we will sign him. I think the Maguire chase will go much the same way as the Lingard chase did, and it will be fruitless. And Moyes now seems to have no choice but to drop his interest in Palhinha because of the player's injury. But will Palhinha's injury make Moyes hurry up and look for alternatives? I don't think it will, because it will make him procrastinate even more, and we will find ourselves probably signing the 2 or 3 players that we currently need in a hurry at the end of the transfer window. We've known about Declan Rice's departure for over a year, maybe longer. We should have had our first choice, second choice, and even third choice targets lined up, made offers for them, and if the first one's refused, we immediately move on to the next one, and so on. Am I worried? Not yet. Am I frustrated? I most certainly am. And by the way, for a signing that we've been told again a deal was very close to, for the Carlos Borges of Man City, we've been told that he will sign for the club probably early next week. Now, I thought, like probably many other people did, that he would have been a Tim Steidten find, but apparently he's a Rob Newman one. And that might also be why we're linked to central defender Taylor Harwood-Bellis of Man City as well. Let's not forget that Newman took up his role at West Ham after he'd been working for Man City. That's it. Very short and sweet. Do join me for the West Ham Weekly on Monday night. I'm usually on just after 9 o'clock, where there'll be, more updates on West Ham United, as well as a live debate with you, the viewers. So do look out for that as well. And like I said, if you're new to the channel, please do hit the like, subscribe, and bell notification. And I will see you all very soon. Thank you for watching.